Without the benefits of ICT, I wouldn't be able to do my work. But with this machine, I can go to the end of the universe, at least in my mind.
One of the ways we've gone wrong in education in the past has been to assume that because children don't run down the corridors that we've built for them, they've got special educational needs. Fundamentally, computers have challenged us with all this because what we thought were children with special needs so often turn out to be children who were exceptional when we set them in front of a computer. Not because the computer's given them some change in the sort of in the gene pool, but because the computer's opened a new door to a new corridor that they can run down.
1 in 5 school children are registered as having special educational needs. In the classroom, these needs often lead to frustration, isolation and bad behaviour.
Teachers have to cope with children who can be very disruptive for a variety of reasons, and ICT can actually be a very important solution for this. It's not a total panacea, but if you get the right ICT and the right support, it can go a long way to mitigating the problems of the children and, of course, the class teacher and the other children.
OK, I want you to look at this first sentence here, which is taken from the story.
At Yew-Tree Community School in Birmingham, ICT really did provide the solution for 8-year-old Stan.
Now that sentence is written from the point of view of the narrator.
10 months ago, I had real problems with Stan. He rejected the class because he didn't have pride in his work and he felt he couldn't participate in the classroom activities. He would, on occasion, sit under the table, and sometimes I would ask him to perhaps take time out by sitting away from the other children, and in this time he would spend his time rolling around, fiddling with things, pulling pictures off the wall.
Desperate for a solution, the school turned to Nicky Muncey, a special needs outreach teacher with Birmingham LEA.
Staff know how to use it.
These are the targets then that we were looking at. We wanted to develop his handwriting so it was more legible, and the last one was to sustain his concentration on his written work for periods of up to 20 minutes.
During written work?
During written work.
Right.
He actually, is that right, Lauren? He's quite, during talking and things in the classroom.
Mental activities and question sessions, he's fine. But when it comes to actually recording any work, that's where he finds it difficult.
If you're looking at it using ICT for an individual child for a lot of the time to do a lot of their recording, you sometimes need to make it more accessible. One of the things that I found useful with a number of children in this situation is just a small, portable, dedicated word processor. So I bought in a small Dreamwriter to loan to the school for Stan to use over an extended period of time to see if that would, answer his needs for use in the classroom.
Stan's had the Dreamwriter to record his work for 4 months now, and there have been extraordinary results. His concentration is better and his behaviour has changed completely. He's getting on with the class and with his work.
He's now able to produce a nicely presented, legible piece of work, whatever the curriculum area is that he's working on, whether it's science or a story or whatever, which is easy to read.
Okay, Stan, just look at it. You can have a read and see if it's okay.
Something starts pulling with its unusual blazing.
Very good, Stan, well done.
Over the last few months, he's become much more confident, much more motivated. His social skills are far better than they were in September. He's a totally different little boy.
It's easier to type than write. Wish I had one of them at home.
And another advantage, Stan's teacher can now assess his real ability.
Being able then to have some clear writing from Stan was, I think, probably quite a breakthrough, really. Stan is actually achieving at the same level, say, in science as a lot of his peers. We can see now that he's getting all the basic concepts and some quite advanced ideas which he's able to articulate and get down on paper. So that's been really good.
As children get older, they are assessed even more heavily on what they have written.
One of the greatest problems that we find for dyslexic pupils, particularly at secondary school age, is their enormous frustration, because they all have ability and they have an awful lot of knowledge and information and ideas in their heads, and their frustration is just not being able to get that out. What technology is able to do now is to level the playing field, to give those children the ability to produce work which does reflect their ability.
Sue gave one of her students, 10-year-old Tom, a laptop, and things turned out even better than expected.
Tom came to us nearly 3 years ago now. He has dyslexic difficulties, not as severe as some of the other children in the school, but one of Tom's biggest problems was his very, very low self-esteem. He really had very little belief in himself, saw himself as a failure, and took an awful lot of convincing for us to actually make him believe that he was an able boy. He was very unwilling to write. In fact, he would find lots and lots of excuses for not writing when he was in Year 8. And we had massive problems with him not handing in homework, conveniently forgetting things, all that sort of work avoidance. And when he did write, it would be very untidy, very short pieces normally, and he would stick with safe words that he knew he could spell rather than using the kind of vocabulary that we know he's able to use.
I wasn't particularly proud of the work that I was handing in. It was sort of like neat writing at the beginning, and by the end it was very unlegible, and spelling was atrocious, so I wasn't very proud of handing it in at the end.
He was always interested in computers, so we decided to try him with a laptop, and we bought him the eMate at the beginning of Year 9.
When I first got my computer, I found that I was always using it because it was a big novelty, like a new toy. I found very quickly that it wasn't very good for note-taking. I wasn't a very fast note-taker, and I found that I was very behind everybody.
He uses it now to produce coursework, he uses it for lengthy pieces of writing, but when he's actually in class and making notes, usually for his own benefit, he writes, and in fact he's producing much, much more writing now than he ever used to.
Far from spelling the end of his writing days, using the laptop has actually encouraged Tom to pick up a pen more than ever. In the same way, for one pupil at Earlham School in Norwich, her use of a computerised library has meant she's now reading more books.
Sam is 14. Her reading age at the moment is around 7, and her level of confidence is also very low with reading, but in all other respects she is average or above average.
Yvonne?
Sir.
Chris? Sir. Sam?
Yes, sir.
Every day, Sam leaves her registration group early to go down to the computer room where she'll practice her reading with electronic library.
Basically, the electronic library is 250 books on the computer. There are always 7 or 8 chapters. Some of the smaller books have 5 or 6, but there's several chapters. So they can take 1 chapter a day, 10 minutes a day, reading through a book.
All friends.
As Sam reads through the chapter, she can click on any words she needs help with.
Intelligent. Now read the text again.
After reading the chapter a second time, she will be asked to spell the words she found difficult.
Now spell the words you got help with. Intelligent.
Sam feels happy with the chapter, she can print it out and read it to a teacher.
Yes, Sam. You're going to read it to me? Okay.
Dolphins are a very special kind of fish. Although they are not...
I like it because you ain't got to read out loud and in front of the whole class and that.
And they look like fishes, but...
It's been helping me with the longer words and the more difficult words.
Very good, Sam. Very good.
I've been using it for about 2 months. And it's pretty good.
I have to say there hasn't been a measurable progress in terms of the testing that we've done, but there has been a distinct progress in terms of confidence and the amount of reading she's done, and that in itself one would hope is going to help her, because she now is prepared to pick up things that maybe she wouldn't have done before and have a go at reading them.
So, ICT can help children over the hurdles imposed by specific learning difficulties.
Art was in the hospital.
I didn't remember the crash.
He had a hard time thinking.
But what about physical difficulties? Liam is one of the pupils at Grove School in Cambridge. Being an integrated school, the teachers are always looking for new ways to enable the special needs children to work alongside their peers.
You can spell there, can't you?
Oh, great.
Liam has cerebral palsy. He can't use a pencil, and so without clicker he would need to use a keyboard to write, and that's quite a slow process for him, although he can do it. But with clicker he can jump words straight into a word processor, and so it's very speedy, and so he can go for a length of writing rather than being stuck at the level of spelling a word out.
Flies.
Yeah.
World.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. That's quite an interesting one.
Clicker lets Liam keep up with the class, and because it's on a laptop, he can sit with the class too.
It's like a little feeler.
Makes it easier to type.
But
it's like a little, they are almost like hands, but we wouldn't say that they were hands because like fish don't have fingers.
It makes me be able to finish a lot more work than I used to.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It makes it quicker for you, so you get to write lots more.
The situation that we used to have was that Liam used to work in a corner of the classroom on a separate computer, and it wasn't possible to arrange the furniture so that he could be close to the rest of his group. And that affected Liam quite badly socially because it meant that he was excluded, and it was also quite difficult to teach that as well because you're trying to be in two places at one time.
And it's letting me work with my friends. And it gives me a bit of entertainment.
Gives you a bit of entertainment as well, does it? In what way? Games.
Games! That's how integrated learning systems often appear. But can they help children with special needs?
They can target their precise difficulties and give them the kind of practice which they need, and individualised programmes which, with the best will in the world, it's very, very difficult for teachers to find the time to keep producing.
One of the more colourful examples is Success Maker. 11-year-old Richard from Maesgwyn School in South Wales uses it every day.
Type little.
The beauty I find of it, it's a very good support programme for the language and literacy teaching within the school.
This word ends with L-E.
It takes each child as an individual, treats them as an individual, and devises a learning system in which they can develop at their own pace and to their own abilities. It also tells me an awful lot about them through the report
little.
system.
Repeat the word after me. Little.
Little.
It doesn't push on and jump in the way that a lot of book-based and pencil-based programs do. It redresses problems that perhaps if you were doing worksheet work or one-to-one work or just plain reading practice work with the children, you wouldn't be addressing the problems, or you wouldn't spot the problems in such intricate detail as the Success Maker and the integrated learning system programs do.
Mark the word that rhymes with dime.
A lot of the language is Americanized, which can be a problem when it's throwing up phrases like dime and candy and things like that the children are not familiar with. And even though they're used to it now, and they do understand what dime and candy, and you will find them going around the corridor going, good job, and things like that, because it's rewarding them at the end by saying these Americanized phrases. So that's the criticism I'd have of it.
Good for you.
ILS are generally made for use for mainstream children, and the accepted ones that are used mainly in schools are not necessarily suitable for children with specific learning difficulties. However, there are a whole range of other programmes like Word Shark and Star Spell and Clicker and so on, which can be used to have a structured system and can also be customised to suit the particular needs of their specific learning difficulties.
One school which uses Word Shark for its pupils with special needs is Garrett Park School in London.
Yes.
Balloon.
Got like all these sharks here, and like you get the mouse, and with this you push it on the shark, and then it comes up, and you've got to spell the word.
The Work Shark is wonderful because there are so many different levels, and there will be something for everybody.
If you get it wrong, it takes a point off of your score.
Zoom.
Through using Word Shark, because it's such a great programme, they're not really conscious that they're overlearning or recapping because it's part of the game, part of the setup.
It's better than looking at books because you can learn them by playing them.
For the blind and partially sighted, like those at Priestley Smith in Birmingham, ICT provides the only route to working independently.
We're increasingly using ICT here. We'll start in the primary department, and children will begin to use very simple programmes, and then as they work through the school we'll introduce more and more complicated packages for them.
Without a closed-circuit television, Sarah wouldn't be able to read the map.
And then it bends round. Then we go down. I'm going to follow the river around all its bends and its course to the estuary. It enlarges bits of writing and pictures that I can't see properly.
We use closed-circuit televisions an enormous amount, which enlarges maps, perhaps any worksheets that I might produce that aren't on a large scale.
And this monitor enlarges print, enabling Laura to write.
We're trying to introduce ICT as much as possible in all curriculum areas. Obviously, with children who are partially sighted and blind, they very much rely on auditory awareness and information obviously coming in that way.
Nina's using standard Microsoft Word, but we've added what's called Zoom text onto this computer so that, as you can hear, you get sound and extra large print. Nina's also using a colour closed circuit to enlarge the print material that she's working from, because at the moment Nina's only just learning Braille, so she needs really a little bit of extra time before she can actually use it in lessons. But she will eventually be working mostly in Braille, won't you, Nina?
Now, Adam, Laura's going to try and...
Jane teaches her pupils how to read Braille with the help of a language master.
Reading the Braille, and then we'll put it through the language master and see if you're correct. Laura, would you like to read that word to do with the River Severn, please?
Fishing.
Fishing. OK. And let's see if Adam, please, could check that you're right there. Do you like to read the Braille version?
Fishing.
Good boy. And let's just check with the language master.
Here.
Fishing.
That's it.
Well done. Laura, would you like to give me a sentence, please?
My
to do
dad
with fishing?
does fishing.
Good girl.
Writing Braille is obviously another important skill for these children.
For many years we've had the Perkins Braille, which is a standard mechanical instrument. But a few years ago we acquired several Jotters, which are very much more portable, simple machines to use.
This is a Jotter. It allows me to edit my work. I can carry it around with me lightly. You know, it's not as heavy as a Perkins Braille, and I can connect it up to an embosser and a printer, and it will get the work out in Braille and print.
Certainly, for the children's point of view, it's made work possibly more accessible and more interesting to them, because they're able to produce work that they're actually able to read back, because obviously handwriting particularly is a problem for some of them. They can write beautifully under the closed circuit television, and certainly obviously using print packages, but reading back ordinary handwriting can be difficult because of their vision.
So ICT can help children who are visually impaired or blind, but what about those with profound and multiple learning difficulties?
If you have profound and multiple learning difficulties, things happen to you. Things come from every side. Life is always one great big turmoil, and you never get an idea of that you're in control of this bit, and when you finish controlling it, it will stop. So it's really part of the whole process of giving them control over themselves and their environment.
Coming to school for the pupils at Wilson Stuart in Birmingham means more discovery, more communication and more fun.
Shall we see who's come to school today? What's a name here? I wonder who it is. I'm going to play that name. Are you listening? Come on.
The children in the nursery are very young. They start with us when they're only about 2.5 and leave us when they're about 4 or 5 years of age.
There she is, look. Will she have a loud voice? Will she have a quiet voice? Yes, I'm here. Oh, it's very loud, very loud.
They all have physical disabilities. The degree of that physical disability will vary from child to child. And a lot of them, I would say the majority of them, have communication difficulties as well. So ICT is very useful in the very early developmental stage, when we're trying to get a child to understand that they can have some sort of impact on their environment, and by that, that when they do something, you know, something's going to happen.
Are you here, Helen? Going to tell us.
Yes. The child is actually using speech, not their own speech, but ICT is providing them with speech to get their message across to somebody else, and someone's responding to that.
Yes, I'm here. Good boy, Anthony. Good boy.
The sort of way that we use ICT is to give them a single switch, and they press the switch and they get a reward. That helps them to understand that they're actually doing something active. So they're learning a little bit about what control they have at a very, very basic level.
Is it Elizabeth's turn?
These children haven't been able to control anything all their lives, and now they've got something that responds purely to their say-so. And if they press a switch, then something happens. If they don't, then nothing happens. So it's completely up to them what happens, which is a tremendously powerful and meaningful activity to them.
What was this?
Next door in the senior school, ICT has, for 2 9-year-old boys, given them the opportunity to write and so be integrated into the classroom.
How do we know about the Victorian clothes? Craig, can you remember? We watched a video, didn't we? We watched a video, we went to the museum.
Faisal and Craig both had road traffic accidents when they were young. I think they were about 4 years of age.
Who'd like to wear a bowler hat?
In both cases, it left them paralysed from the neck down, which means they're unable to use a keyboard in the ordinary way. They have special attachments Faisal uses the tracker ball using his chin and his cheeks to activate the switches. Craig has head switches, and that enables them to use the computer without using the keyboard in the conventional way.
Do you need a capital?
You do need a capital for Victoria.
Okay.
Very good.
Faisal uses a package called Pen Friend, which actually predicts the ends of the words that he might be using. Well done. So what are you going on to write now? It saves the tedious task of going through putting in all those letters individually, and he's able to select the word that he wants to use. It means that Craig and Faisal can both feel very much part of the class. They can record in the same way as other children are doing, which is to say as independently as possible. They don't need to have an adult sitting constantly by their side scribing for them, and that in turn obviously increases their self-esteem and self-worth. They feel that they are able to be part of the class in exactly the same way as the other children.
The use of ICT at our school and in schools like ours will increase over time. With the development of the internet, with the development of the National Grid for Learning, then more of our youngsters will be able to communicate with other people in other parts of the country, in other parts of the world, and may not even need to tell them that they have any disability.
If you've got a child who can't communicate in any way at all, then you need to look at alternative means of communication, and frequently those alternative means of communication are provided through ICT.
It's very motivating for children with special needs. They've often failed in other ways or had experience of failure.
Children with profound and multiple handicaps, it gives them a real access perhaps to communication that they would be totally without otherwise.
We've seen jumps in levels in very short spaces of time you wouldn't expect working at normal classroom pace, and especially with this type of children.
It helps them to actually realise their potential.
Normally, we take speech for granted, but some children have special difficulties. In the past, little could be done for these children, and they often grew up without language. Studies of the early years have indicated how important language is to the development of the brain. So in the past, children with speech difficulties became further disadvantaged. Fortunately, modern information and communications technology, ICT, provides a way of breaking out of this bind.